Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Osterlink. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. Today, I'm sitting down with Gabriel Keczan, a men's coach and relationship specialist who's built his work around one core idea, helping men stop hiding and start leading. He's a founder of Alive on Purpose, works deeply in the realm of marriage, masculinity, and personal truth, and is known for guiding men through breakdowns, whether that's in relationships, purpose, or identity, into real, grounded leadership in their lives. Gabriel, good to see you.
Thanks, Michael. It's so great to be with you.
Yeah, I've been, as I said offline, reading your work on Substack, and I obviously want you to plug that a little bit later, and reading your stuff on Facebook as well. And I've been looking forward to this conversation because we both kind of play in a somewhat similar space. And I love your way you think about these things. But before we kind of jump into your operating philosophy and how you work with the men that you work with, why men's work? What led you to this space?
Um, Really, it's a process of surrender uh, to find myself here. Um, I think it was 15 years ago. I was training to be a therapist, and I was the only man in my cohort of
Mm,
a 2-year cohort with 25 some odd women, and all women instructors. And even then, I knew that I was called into this work and into this field because there's something missing and something important for boys' development
mm,
and for men and the missing initiation rites that help a culture flourish. Um, because of some trouble I went through in my adolescence, I knew that this was something I'd been building through my 20s, and then uh, I also felt the pushback from the therapeutic world, which wasn't ready for the conversation, and maybe it's still not ready for the conversation that men and women are different, and and we have different modes of operating, uh, and so yeah, that's kind of how I fell into this. Because after doing 2 years in a training with only women, I turned around and I was like, I need to spend time with some men. And I joined some men's groups, got really deeply involved with men's training and archetypes and
mm.
a number of different organizations I've trained with because that just brought me back into balance with who I'm here to serve. And now I work at that crazy wisdom intersection point of men and women and marriage and how to make this work in the era we're in with the pressures, the societal pressures that are on men and women to figure this equation out and figure out family and marriage. So this is this is where it's going.
I love that. And actually, you and I share some similar experiences. I think I had a couple guys in my program 30 some years ago, but it's San Francisco Bay Area, mostly women. More than half of the instructors were female as well. Very politically correct environment, not recognizing differences for political reasons. So I think I believe I understand what the milieu you came out of and the questions you needed to ask and get answered after the fact. And I love hearing that your work is not like, oh, I'm going to affect some number of people. Like you're actually calling for a cultural shift. Like you're from what I just heard you share and some of the reading that I've done of yours, like, yes, obviously you're going to affect the couples you work with, et cetera, and the families you work with. But like you're actually looking to shift how we think about these things. And one of the things I've seen you write about is a healthy marriage is a wealth strategy. And I love for you to unpack that. What do you mean by that? And if you could bring in some of the cultural forces that you've been working through and on as part of that conversation, that'd be really cool too.
Okay, that's rich territory. And I also want to say I'm just grateful to be in this conversation because I also love your writing. I think there's lots of overlap with the stuff that we're all both about. And I feel like in a way we serve the same man in a way. And I see you focused on performance and and yet I'm focused maybe on a different doorway into his life with looking at the marriage, optimizing the marriage and family game. Um, but as far as marriage as a wealth strategy, that's one of the overlooked pieces when a high performing man gets into achieving, driven man. Uh, it's easy to overlook home and the home base and the relationships there that are nourishing and they're ultimately are the reason he's doing what he's doing in his business. And the higher he climbs in business, the more expensive is the drift in his marriage.
Yeah.
And right now, especially this week, I've been going live on socials to talk about this because I'm getting lots of messages that a lot of marriages are in crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would almost describe the crisis as under attack by forces in society that are not supportive of this project of integral families. And um, I think the marriage as a wealth strategy comes back to uh, the two forces of sex and money, and how they're both creative forces, and they're embodied primal trust areas. And so there's a link. Obviously, Napoleon Hill even writes about this in Sexual Transmutation in Think and Grow Rich. There's this correlation between sex and money and personal power, and so I think that the thing that separates a lukewarm marriage from a marriage that becomes great, like to go from good to great, is the ability to light the fire and see uh, the importance of keeping love alive and always courting your spouse, always learning about them, and being willing to die uh, every day as you go through the ego deaths and the different seasons of life. I was listening to a mentor talk about how he's married to his wife 22 years, and that over that 22 years, he's actually had six different marriages by his reckoning with the same woman.
No, I get that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
just you have to keep dying if you're going to keep growing and evolving. But you have to be able to let go and hold on at the same time. Hold on to what's important and grow together and hold on to each other. Um, and then keep the vision happening. I've been married 14 years and I've been through a divorce myself, so I know the identity level destruction of a man when he goes through that. Um, and I've seen it over and over again as I support and work with men who are walking that line, who are like, if I don't ch- change what's this, we're gonna have a very different life. And so yeah, it's very, very sacred work to look at the family and the marriage and remember why they're important.
Listen to your language. Those two streams that come to my mind are very transpersonal and very somatic.
Yeah.
Because the death is a very transpersonal kind of orientation. Like you must die to your past identity and grow into a new one, and again and again and again. So I love that because I'm a transpersonally oriented therapist. So I'm like, cool. And then the somatic thing is too, like letting go. It literally is not just a conceptual thing, it's actually a physical thing. You got to let it go out of your physical system as well as emotional, energetic, and stuff like that. Talk to me about your like how you conceive of these things in the transpersonal somatic space, because I know you have training and background and a lot of really cool experiences. How do these forces come together, and how you your kind of your operating philosophy with couples and specifically with men?
Well, I guess if I were to bring together a few different disciplines that I weave into my consulting, it's depth, like depth psychotherapy and mythopoetics. I would geek out on the Minnesota Men's Conference archive on YouTube while I was in my training,
Okay.
just to fill up on things that Robert Bly would say or Robert Moore, and just really drink in their vision of men's work and the depth and the archetypal. Um, and of course, I've got my finger on the pulse of all of the current marriage frameworks, like the Gottmans, you know, David Dita, of course, major influence in men's work, and that embodied presence. I think the X factor is sexual polarity because a lot of therapists are quite disembodied. They're all up here and they're working with these frameworks that are not embodied. But when you're in the practice, the way I roll is it's like jujitsu. It's like you're listening for the 90% of the communication that's nonverbal.
Yeah, right.
And that's where their truth is. And to me, truth is about, or intimacy is about truth. Um, before
Well,
it's about sex. It can be
walk me
about sex, but it's firstly about like, do I even know what's true for me and do I have the courage to say it?
walk me through, like, you're working with a couple, you're working with a client as part of a couple. How do you help them tap into what is true for them? And also, how do you work through the most 90% of the communication is nonverbal? How do you bring that to conscious awareness inside the couple or
Well,
inside the couple?
it's really just a presencing practice and a permission field when I work with an individual or a couple. Then sometimes we'll do a little centering meditation
Nice.
uh, to drop in, and I set the frame, um, and we make some agreements around, how the time is going to go and how to titrate between what's coming up, because there's always the story, right, of what I think it's about, but then there's the lived experience of like the tightening in my throat or the like the tension in my jaw or the sense of collapse and depression and like whatever the emotional embodiment posture comes into the field, that's what's actually real. And that's what we need to listen to and find out what's there and unwind. So I'm more interested in the embodiment signature than I am about the story, although the story is necessary too, because they go together. But in the last 2 years, I've personally made a hard pivot towards biblical foundations and
Okay.
towards Christ, not so much as a in a religious way, but in a I'm getting to know him.
Mm.
And that comes with influences from other men's organizations I've worked with that prioritize a biblical order of the family. And what I've found is that somatically, it also just works. There's wisdom. There's so much wisdom in the Bible, both as a business book, maybe the greatest business book ever written, and as a marriage manual. Um, and that's, I think, a lot of the trouble is the drift away from keeping God, that transpersonal presence, in between the couple.
Now you're gonna have to unpack that for me. Like, so, okay, talk to me about business and Bible and marriage into the Bible, like how it informs your philosophy and how you work with couples.
Well, I guess there's, uh, you know, I don't know where to start on this because we could go a lot of directions. But just this week, I heard this prophecy from Lady Fatima, and she's maybe some kind of Catholic saint. I didn't even get the context, but she said that the final battle between Christ and the kingdom of darkness is going to happen in the realm of marriage and family.
So would that then indicate to me for what you said earlier, some of the cultural forces at play that are kind of just trying to break apart the family and the marriage as a concept are not just cultural, but spiritual or transpersonal in some sense?
Yeah, exactly. And like starting to see things as spiritual warfare
Yeah.
informed
Yeah.
with the idea of an enemy, and the enemy doesn't show up like a big bad monster. It shows up in accusation, it shows up in blame, it shows up in denial or depression. It shows up in the trauma vortex when a couple will fall into fighting around certain patterns. I
Mm.
call it the trauma vortex from a trauma frame. Um, but what's happening is there's an invasion from the enemy that's making the couple think that each other is the enemy rather than seeing the attack for what it is and loving each other and staying present enough. The third thing in the three braided weave of marriage is God. There's the man, the woman, and there's God. And if we slow down enough to remember to be connected, prayerful in whatever discipline. It doesn't have to be a Christ centered. If you can find your breath, find the presence of that third thing, what the poets used to call it, the third thing. They'd call it the body. It's a third body between you. Then you're going to find resource and you're going to find a way to navigate whatever the trouble is. Because I truly believe the greatest gift you can give children is a solid marriage, and it's worth fighting for rather than fighting in. And sometimes a couple just needs a new nervous system. That's what we can do with an intervention. And that's, I just finished working with a couple who completely transformed their marriage because I would listen to them and they were having a really hard time listening to each other. And just having that listening. My parents were married 50 years before my dad passed. And their secret, when I asked them, was simple. They just said, we listen to each other. Um,
So let me ask you a question about that because it's very simple. I'm actually background trained as a marriage and family therapist. I've been working with couples for 30 years,
right. So you know the territory.
but it's not easy. Like what do you imagine if you can make some kind of universal statements that make it so hard for any one person to literally listen, first of all, to themselves? That seems like a hard fullness of their selves, not just the chatter in their mind, but also to another human being, one that they claim to love and want to spend a large portion of their life with. But yet it still seems hard for people to really listen fully for another human being. What do you make of that? Why? Why are we so difficult?
Yeah, well, I think that largely there's intergenerational traumas. There's complexity with the modern family. There's a lot of blended families now on their second marriages with kids, and we don't even have maps. Even the therapy world doesn't have efficient maps for how to handle these complexities and the divided loyalties of a blended family and the pressures and how to show up as a step parent and parent together with all the possibilities and permutations of the dynamics. So there's complexity and then there's intergenerational stuff, which is if I didn't get shown what a husband and wife solid committed together feels like when I'm young, then I'm not gonna know or have a imprint in my tissue on how to walk through that and how to live that. So some of it is modeling. This couple I just finished working with, we're blending a family, 3 kids from him, 2 kids from her, and they had histories of lots of blended families in their upbringing. So the um, the escape hatch is always there, like when things get too hot. Uh,
Mm,
but I believe in transformation, and most of the trauma lives in the body, right? We know this. So being body centered is the great pattern interrupt in
yeah, yeah.
the consulting room. That's where all the, let's call them even demonic invasions, can get identified, claimed, and like cleared. And here's the thing is this is what separates my critique of the therapy, couples and marriage therapy, from the way I roll,
Mhm.
is that the discipline is set up with way too much passivity and way too much fragility, where they're
Ooh,
looking at like, what's the trouble? Let's prioritize feelings over commitments, because the Bible's quite clear that marriage is about a covenant commitment first, and feelings are a part of that. But if you put feelings at the top, it's a recipe for like um, trauma leading. And the therapy space is designed for this white glove of the trauma.
mhm,
So, as a facilitator, I'm going to cross check my people with the truth. And I'm going to break the rules of couples therapy, and I'm going to not be neutral. If I hear one person who's a little bit more needing to look at themselves and look at their work, we'll
mhm.
go there and we'll use the session for that. Because at the end of the day, it's just breaking up with the lies that limit. and their whatever
Okay.
false beliefs they've internalized around their worthiness of love, lovability, deservingness of having that marriage be what it could be, uh, and because it's pretty hard to go out in the world and live your purpose fully if what's happening at home feels like a war zone. If it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like a sanctuary, there's like this. So there's an embodied quality of leadership that I bring with a much more masculine leadership orientation around the man listening, because women and our wives are not really listening to the words we say, they're listening to our tone of voice. we know we know this. So how do we hold the frame so
Mm.
that she feels safe, so she can be her radiant, flowering, feeling self, and we're not going to buckle or get defensive if it sounds like an attack. We're going to just be able to hold frame and see her and hear her, um, and let her relax. It's almost like putting an acupuncture needle in exactly the right spot. Because if she gets hurt in just the right way, her whole nervous system settles, and that's the way, it could work, that's the listening piece, is it's not just what they're saying, it's, an embodied experience almost like martial arts where you're actually setting the game up to to create safety.
So two things. I love your bringing in the martial arts. The name of my couple's work is the Relationship Dojo because I say that, we train for everything else, marathons or tough mudders or Spartan races, but we don't train for marriage. We don't train for love. And that's probably the most important thing to train for. So talk to me. You brought in Chinese medicine as well. You brought in the theoretical framework of Chinese medicine. Kind of found the acupuncture point, the one point that opens the system up. And I know you have some background and training in the philosophical space, in the somatic space of that. Can you bring that into this conversation? Because I thought it was interesting you brought that up.
Um, well, I mean, Chinese medicine theory is, as you know, all elemental, right? It's about the water and the wood and the fire and the growth, right? The elements play into it a lot, and it's like all metaphor. It's all metaphor, but it's all actually about the body. It's all about the embodiment. Um, and so I think there's crossover there. Like if I'm teaching a couple how to get resourced,
Mhm.
um, and if I'm reminding myself how to get resourced when I'm in the pit and I'm in the, because I call myself a player coach, right? I'm married but not perfect, and uh, is I orient to the elements, like feel your feet, connect
Yeah.
with the earth,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
step outside and take a little walk, get some breath in your lungs. When you pull back and get personally resourced, the shape of the problem changes and you see it more for what it is rather than the distortion that comes if you're not feeling uh good. And I also say, like, fatigue, this is a old samurai thing. I think they say fatigue is a misuse of energy. So if you're feeling fatigued, you shouldn't be talking about important things, especially with your wife. You should be dating your wife. You should set aside time. You should have that nice lunch together and, then talk about the important things. So it's also about capturing the problems and putting them in the right places in
I love.
time so that
Yeah.
you can come back to them and deal with them with the right kind of attention that they need.
So, do you encourage your couples to have like rituals around crucial conversations or challenging conversations?
Absolutely. I always say it's better to pre-frame them,
Yeah.
because if you got something overdue you need to talk about that's been avoided for a long time, you have to be the one who can initiate the hard conversations. Robert Glover always points out that when the man sets the tone in the relationship, it always works better. I know that's not a popular thing to say, but that's what I coach guys on. Is like, you need to stop avoiding your wife's feelings because you're afraid of her intensity. Like that's what's going to end up in the divorce or the sexless marriage or whatever it is. And so you sometimes have to penetrate the avoidance and say, we need to talk about something important. Let's do that, you know, Tuesday at 4 o'clock. And then when you pre-frame it, then okay, there's an agreement and expectation. Okay, well, this is important, or we're going to do it in, 30 minutes. And then you kind of diffuse some of the charge around it. So that is putting things in the right place. And
And I love the fact that you brought up, making sure that they're resourceful, 'cause I find that to be one of the many missing things in couples work is, if both of them are not more resourced than not resourced, you can work on all the effective communication tools you want. They're not able to even get there because they're dysregulated emotionally or energetically, whatever might be off for them. They're not sleeping well, they're not eating well, they're not moving, they're not dealing with stress well. It's really hard to have an amazing, deeply held conversation if you just feel like crap, basically.
yeah, totally. And yeah, the I think that the instinctual comes in, and there's this idea in personal growth of instinct injury. I think the woman who wrote the book Women Who Run with the Wolves
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is often accredited with this term, instinct injury, but it plays out different with women than it does with men. Obviously, right? We're wired differently with different embodied roles. Uh, but I think in the main, there's a lot of ideology and mainstream kind of programming that separates people from our embodied instinct and our wisdom in the body. So anything I'm doing in my consulting room is bringing people back into the wisdom of their body. That's why the subtitle of my book is Backbone, Heart, and Balls. For men, that's the masculine axis of like, hey, am I actually present, or am I trapped in my head? Even erectile dysfunction is more often than not a disembodiment issue because a guy will get far too much in his head. Porn addiction will just amplify that even worse. But if he actually gets back into his body, gets into his fitness, whether it's training, martial arts, whatever, he's going to go, whoa, wait, I am again, and I'm feeling good. And here, everything gets reset. So yeah, it's all about overcoming the instinct injury, and I mean, we could even talk about nice guy syndrome and codependency in that same vein, because it's when people, uh, forget about their own needs and put others first, and that's a troubling pattern. No matter what, if it's coming from the man or the woman, what we ultimately want is to create secure attachment, the promised land of healthy interdependency, and mutual empowerment. And sometimes that looks like going through seasons of different ways of relating.
Walk us through that a little bit, and maybe a case study. One of your clients maybe has a more of an anxious attachment style, and you're like, your goal, one of your goals is to get them more secure. Maybe their partner has which one you run away from.
The avoidant one.
Boy, sorry, I couldn't remember the word.
I, I
So,
talked.
yeah,
I
sorry.
talked with a guy this week who I worked with last year, and we did a follow up call. His wife wanted a separation. I talked to him in January. She wanted him to sign the divorce papers that Friday, and that was the last I'd heard. He was like, "Yep, gonna do that." He didn't want it. It was crushing his soul. He was the anxious one. She was the avoidant one. They had 2 kids. And, so I checked in with him. I said, "How'd that go? What happened with the paper signing and all that?" Because that was a big deal. And he reported back to me. He's like, "Gabriel, I decided not to sign." He was excited. He was, like, all fired up. He's like, "I decided I'm not done with my marriage, and I still wanna fight for it." And I was so proud of him. He's very biblically oriented too. He doesn't believe in divorce, and he wants to resolve it. And he sees his part of the problem. He's owning that, and he wants to bring it back together. So sometimes that's what I mean by seasons
Mhm.
different, and sometimes you do take time apart so you can remember who you are. Um, and so I was just encouraging him, and so I think that there was a level of coming home to his vitality and his true desire. He did not want to collapse into a divorce he didn't really agree with, and he said no. Like no is a power statement. It's a full sentence, and you can say no, and you need to, because your most powerful yes lives right beside the no that's hardest to say.
The visual imagery I get hearing what you subtitled your book is like, oh, he got a backbone and some balls. Like, cool. And
Mo
sure,
the
finally in his
the
marriage.
the metaphor that we go with in men's workspaces is like, are your balls in your wife's purse? Is she holding all the frame? Is she making all the calls? And I think marriage, modern marriage by design, is actually designed to domesticate a man. And so sometimes I'll invite men to imagine what or who they would be if there were no women on the planet and no children. There's just dudes. Like, who would you be as a man amongst men if you weren't looking for your wife for outside validation? If you weren't putting her in the mommy position, who would you be if you were just the man you were born to be?
Wow.
Like, as an exercise in imagining
Yeah.
who he is and getting back in touch with like feeling good in his own skin. And so that breaks the spell of that domestication pattern. Um, and I know that was why I went through the divorce, because I was a people pleaser and nice guy. And it was the most untrustworthy man is the nice guy. That's we know this now.
Yeah, I can attest to that through personal experience. Playing that role. I'm not blaming someone else. I'm taking responsibility for that role. I played it.
That's right. I heard it.
Um, Actually, that's a great segue because one of the things I want to ask you in all your work with these couples, what are you learning about yourself, and how
Uh,
does it show up in your relationships?
that is such a beautiful question, Michael, because as practitioners, we have to sometimes look in the mirror of our practice and go, what's the lesson? I've been doing this for 10 years or more or whatever, and go, okay, why is this a mirror I'm still looking in?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think I, in the last 2 years, found a lever that I didn't know was there
Mm.
around shame, because
Oh,
shame is the master emotion at the core of most therapeutic work, is like differentiating different from guilt, which is I did something bad. Shame is when I think I am bad and I have some kind of internalized undeservingness or unworthiness, right? That's the core grief, the core holding pattern, the core lie of the enemy inside of any process. I think that's been my experience. So wondering, well, what am I doing in my own self to go for 10 years listening to men's deepest, darkest pain, finding their shame, finding their guilt, finding their flawed self-concepts underneath the hood, and why do I still feel stuck? Why
yeah.
why do is there some place where I'm still projecting onto my clients my own incompleteness?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And that's when I got into the finished work of the cross and the uh, the debt paid in full, uh, that people who have a relationship with Christ start
Mm.
to understand to. And I say this to a lot of the men that I'm working with, if they have complexity in their marriage or problems they want to solve in their family and leadership, I say you have to adopt the position that you're saying yes to becoming the master healer of your marriage. You have to lead like a master healer and you have to trust yourself to that level. And so if you're going to be doing that level of work, you have to have an orientation. So Christ, to me, is the fulcrum that helped me break up with all those places and holding patterns in myself that I was putting into the work, or that were hidden from me. Um, and just like finding a lever that lets me lift, lets me take flight, lets me just go develop new businesses, new ventures. And that's kind of the direction I'm going now, focusing on speaking, being a messenger rather than a rescuer, because there's also a lot of rescuer
Another
archetypes.
role. Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
In the nice guy, there's like, I'm going to go rescue them. I'm going to go rescue them. That's an immature expression of the hero. Once you finish saving others, you can actually become the mature man, the warrior, the king, and operate from a different playbook.
I love that, and I love the circle back to, Jungian, archetypes, the king, the warrior, you brought hero, like, I think that's brilliant to bring those kind of things into this conversation, and I had a completely different thought, and I just went off in a different direction. Let me see if I can come back to because you said something, I was like, "Oh, man, really want him to unpack that." On the this is not the question, but this also crossed my mind too. On the biblical side of things, how do you handle any pushback you might get from either the man or the woman who maybe are more take kindly to what they perceive as a biblical admonition that the man's in charge and the woman's must be subservient to the man? That's, I don't know. I would love your take on that, but also, like, what do you believe around that to be the relationship between a man and a woman from a biblical perspective? And then how do you handle anyone who might misinterpret or misunderstand that comes
Great
to your
que
practice?
That's a that's a surgical precision question. And I'm still developing the right way to talk about that, so this is really useful. I don't necessarily see the headship, the biblical description of the headship as it being in charge.
Okay.
It's actually an embodied role of provider protector, and there's perimeter. The masculine is walking the perimeter to keep the home safe. Um,
Okay.
and the home is animated by the woman's touch. The home is like the woman is the womb, and the home you walk into a bachelor's den, and it's just a different feel. Like we know this. Like it's like guys are just gonna they eat out of the sink. They're not gonna create the same um home feel to it. And that I think that there's something sacred to remember that women have been let out of with the sort of feminist forces driving women into the workforce,
Mhm.
and the sacredness of tending home.
Mhm.
And so I see these roles as complementary. They're yin and yang. And
Mhm.
while the man is described in terms of the headship, it does not in any way imply superior. It is like complementary opposites. It's like fire and water. And if he's expressing the full masculine leadership, and taking authority the way he could, um, she's going to expand into her full flowering essence as a mother. And we're actually designed. But here's the thing: in terms of explaining that, I'm not here to debate ideology,
Uh-huh.
because if you do that, the trauma patterns in a woman or a man that are unaddressed are going to get subverted into the intellectual bypass. And now we're going to be like this. We're going to be arguing about ideologies, roles, all of it. I'm not here for that.
Okay.
That's not going to solve anything. In fact, that's going to make it worse. There's a metaphor of like if the woman doesn't see the headship, then you've got two heads. If she doesn't see the man in his role, his instinctual primal role, then she's going to try and embody the headship. And now you have a two-headed monster, which has killed more marriages than anything. Somebody pointed that out the other day. So I'm not going to try and explain it conceptually. Right now, you and I are spitballing in
Of
in
course.
the intellectual, uh, in the logical, but in the practice, it's embodied. And that's what I get my husband clients to walk out in their home is don't try and explain it to women. Don't try and explain sexual polarity. Embody it.
Just do it.
It's like trying to tell someone who Christ is who doesn't want to know. Forget about it. Just be like him. Just be what Christ would be doing. So they see someone that, and if they know that you know Christ, they might want to know Christ. Like that's the difference is you're not pushing ideology or visions of God or grandiosity. You're just doing what you should do in an embodied way, in a communicative, relational way. Um, to me, that's the difference. And I mean, we could go on and pick apart scripture, but
That's cool. That's
that's
cool.
the sort of at first blush.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You mentioned your book.
Yeah.
I've mentioned your writing. Where can people find more of your work?
Uh, the book's on Amazon, and it's called Alive on Purpose. Unclench from fear and step into your power with backbone, heart, and balls. It's a book for men uh, around purpose work, which, um, as we know, there's a hunger for. I think in a lot of men's circles is to know like who am I and what's God's purpose for my life. Because when we know that, it it's like the code breaker. It's like you can step out of the matrix and open up whole new adventures for yourself. New trouble.
That's for sure too. It's like, knowing your why. If you know your why, you can almost handle anything and everything. Yeah,
And
I love that.
I'm
Okay, so that's your book on Amazon.
yeah. And I mean, I write on Substack, and I write on Facebook. I just scatter my writings around right now. I don't have a lot of other than the Substack where there's a bit more articles collected. It's called Provoke Freedom with Gabriel Keczan. That's and I love Substack as a platform because I'm just discovering so many great writers there, and there's a podcast there now, and it's a little pocket of the internet where people actually read and think and listen, and there's less trolls. It's not as
I 100% agree. Like, really good conversations both online and offline. It's really kinda cool. Yeah, so
I'm
I
so curious about how you got into creating a relationship dojo because we're in really similar, uh, I think, backgrounds with depth and embodiment and like, how did you get here?
Hey, you gonna reverse and interview me?
Yeah,
I was really lucky. I had a formative experience when I was around 9 years old. I had an amazing therapist. A quick story before that is my mom. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. I had some learning challenges, some health challenges as a kid. And the funny story is my mom took me to see a psychiatrist in 1979. You can imagine a psychiatrist most likely is going to put you on drugs. That's what psychiatrists still do, but this 79 is even more likely he's going to do so. And fortunately for me, I turned to her at the end of the session. I said, "He's fat, he smokes, he can't help himself. How's he going to help me?" And I walked out. I didn't get in trouble. She actually agreed. Thank God.
you said that about the psychiatrist
Yeah.
at age 14?
9. I was
Oh, nice.
really fucking sorry. Really obnoxious, but yes, I said that.
That's amazing.
And fortunately, it didn't get me in trouble because my mom found me Mrs. Pat Lawson, a therapist, not a psychiatrist. And she taught me biofeedback, guided imagery, meditation, got me to the martial arts. So, like, if I would have continued to see a psychiatrist, my life would have been this
Yeah,
completely different. Then, oh my God, I learned how to use biofeedback machines and, manage my own emotional states through guided imagery and meditation, completely different life. And that's what started me off on this whole
the
path.
tou the actual tools.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, at 79, the technology wasn't cool, but for a kid, like, it was really cool. Like, I remember, the computer screen is on, I'm doing my breathing exercises, and a balloon would rise if I'm relaxed, and if the more stress I got, it would start falling, or a galvanic skin response. So you put your fingers in this little machine, and the more relaxed you are, it gets quiet. The more stressed you are, so, like, it's kinda really neat to learn how to manage your nervous system, back then. Still.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's rare.
Yeah. So that's what started me on this whole path to eventually becoming a therapist, and almost 30 years therapist, 25 of those as a coach.
Well, I'm just so glad to know you're in the field because it's like, the field needs more men like you doing this
Yeah.
way you're doing it and, changing patterns. That's the end game I like to say is I'm not here to debate ideology. I'm here to solve real problems. And usually they're embodied problems. Like they're embodied and they're relational. Yeah.
100% agree. Well, this has been great, Gabriel. I really appreciate your time. One more time, where can people find all your stuff?
I post on Facebook often. I'm on Substack. I have a YouTube channel. Haven't made any videos in a while.
Yeah.
Uh, and then Amazon. But yeah, that's
We'll make sure to include that all in the show notes.
yeah.
I've
Thank
really enjoyed this conversation, man. I appreciate you.
Me too. It's been great to we should do this again, and it's like, there's a lot spitball in here that is, on fire. I feel the sparks.
I open invitation, come back and let's keep talking.
Amazing.
Thanks, man.